also come in and line up. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. And I think that was it. Wanted to remind you also that next week will be our last Newton series, and we'll have the Delta Prize, and we will be back at our regular time from 5 to 6:30. And with no further ado, Diana, Diversity Officer, I'd like to say that from Femtech.
Hi everyone, my name is Diana Artiaga. I'm the Diversity Coordinator for Femtech, and I just want to let you all in on some logistical matters, and then I'll introduce our panel speakers. So first off, this event is being live streamed right now. The documentary wasn't, but this panel session will be. And if you're a student, if you need to check in with Nick Hill outside to make sure that your attendance is counted. And then if you have any questions, like Victoria said, please line up on the side. Oh, this works, cool. So a little bit about Femtech. We help put this event together in order to raise awareness about the lack of people of color and women of color in the tech industry, which is a really huge problem. We are Berkeley's first tech club for women of all majors and of all different tech experiences. So if you've never coded in your life, we welcome you. If you're a top level coder, we welcome you. We're a safe space for everyone to learn how to code, or just to learn what are the jobs available in the tech industry, whether you want to be a coder or a marketer, whatever. So then without further ado, first of all, y'all can like our page, and there's a list of all the events we've had previously, and in the future we'll have some more events. We usually have coding workshops or a speaker series, and yeah. So without further ado, I'll introduce our panel. So Miley is a search engine leader at Yahoo. Hi. She is a successful technology leader in business and culture transformation, and this is really cool. She's a Six Sigma black belt with over 20 years of experience managing, building, implementing, and integrating on enterprise scale applications and solutions across multiple lines of business. She's played a key role in the completion of over 30 mergers and acquisitions with expertise in complex business processes integrations. She also has an extensive experience in business and systems experience in engineering, IT operations. Ms. Lee also has successfully worked with executive management and effectively user planning and execution skills to deliver world-class solutions to her partners and customers. So we're very lucky to have her. And then our next speaker is Michelle Titolo. She's the lead software engineer at Capital One and serves as an advisor for women who code. She's been making iOS apps for over 6 years, and she has shipped over a dozen apps for the Apple App Store and designed and implemented APIs for a number of them. She enjoys debugging, refactoring, and finding elegant solutions to difficult problems. Outside of work, like I said, she is an advisor for women who code, but also she's an avid Doctor Who fan. And then Cedric Brown here, he's from the Kapor Center. The Capers. Was it Kapor? Caper. Kapor, okay. Mm-hmm. He is the Chief Community Officer there. He has over 20 years of experience as a funder and activist, steering over $60 million worth of grants into community efforts and to different organizations. He has worked steadily to ensure access, inclusion, and greater empowerment for people of color. His recent projects include collaborations with the White House, Office of Science and Tech Policy, Google, the Congressional Black Caucus Tech 2020 Initiative, and many more things. And he was also featured in the documentary. He is the founder of Brothers Code, the Oakland Summit on Blacks in Tech, and is co-founder on College Bound Brotherhood. Cedric is recognized as a change maker by the San Francisco Chronicle and by Root.com, and for his leadership, participation in the launch of President Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative, and he's also a proud board member of Color of Change, as well as a published author and creative artist. And our last panelist was Laura Gomez, but she couldn't be here today. Yeah, she couldn't be here today, but without further ado, we could start the panel.
Oh, terrific. Okay, we're on. So thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you to the College of Engineering, thank you to Vicki, thank you to Femtech Berkeley for putting this gathering together today. And I just want to express as the moderator that I'm honored to be present. Robin and I have done, she has invited me to participate on various panels, and I've always enjoyed it because I think that this is key work. This is a critical piece of media for us to grasp and learn and to move forward with. And as someone who is an ally and an advocate, certainly around racial justice in the tech sector, I'm always pleased and honored to be present. So thank you, Robin, for just starting all of this and giving us something to view, to question, to push our own thinking around diversity, representation, and inclusion in the sector. So having said that, this film has taken you from Mill Valley to Tribeca, from the UK to India, and all around the world. What have you seen? What have you learned? What have you been surprised by around its reception?
Well, as I said a little bit when I was introducing the film, I think the most surprising thing was that I really thought that it would just be of interest to the tech industry. And it's been really fabulous to see that it's actually had legs beyond that. And that the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, Auto Trader UK did a screening. Macy's.com was on the phone with me today. Home Depot's interested in doing a screening in Atlanta. Coca-Cola wants to do a screening. The financial sector tomorrow night, it's with Stifel. And so I think that what it means is that we sort of unapologetically hit upon issues that women and people of color are facing across industry, not just in tech. And that's surprising and humbling and incredibly rewarding to me.
And we're approaching the year anniversary.
Yeah, today actually.
Oh, it's today.
Yeah.
Ta-da! 1 year anniversary.
That's been great.
Since the world premiere at Tribeca, which was really thrilling, actually. I got to go and see that and participate. So in the year that has passed, what progress do you think the sector has made? Aside from the exposure activities that certainly the film and other work have brought about, what progress have you seen?
Well, I guess sadly, but also lucky for me, the film isn't going to get dated too quickly. But sadly, not so much in the numbers. The numbers really aren't moving. Mm-hmm. And in fact, another surprising thing that we learned was that in the mid-'80s, there were more women in tech than there are now. In the year 2000, there were more women in tech than there are now. It's a little shocking to see that the numbers continue to fall. So I think that's an issue. Having said that, the number of articles, the number of the media, the panels, the fact that we're getting all these screenings, I think the conversation is rising. And I think that in itself is a big deal, and that's a start. The fact that GoDaddy and Salesforce just decided that they were going to equal the pay differential between men and women, I think was something that has sparked out of this entire conversation. So I think there's progress being made. I think there's conversation about it.
Terrific. And I'm sure folks will have more questions for you when we get to the Q&A, because that's often the rich part of these kind of panel discussions. So Michelle, as the panelist who is closest to being a digital native, I'm curious about what challenges and opportunities you see around the diversification of the inclusion of folks who have heretofore been excluded from the tech sector. What opportunities exist?
There are so many opportunities. Let me just check if my mic's working. Is that better? Oh, there we go. Okay, switch was off. So technology has moved forward at a pace that allows so many more things to happen, not just in terms of server capacity or bandwidth, but actually in the way that people connect with each other. With the proliferation of social networks, which when I was growing up, we had none, and then there was MySpace, and my MySpace page was awesome. And now we have all of these ways of connecting and keeping in touch, but at the fast pace that all of that moved, things like protection for people who might not want their personal information publicly visible, anti-harassment policies, anti-harassment sort of features. Twitter didn't add blocking as a first-party feature until I think it's been a year now, but for a while it was, if someone was being not nice to you on the internet, you didn't have a lot of recourse. So I see that as one of the greatest challenges that both the tech industry faces, because it's a problem that needs to get solved, but as well as the society as a whole, because we have these people who are doing these terrible things, and we need to make everywhere safer. Where I think tech specifically has an opportunity to excel at this is because we're at the forefront of innovation right now. We're the ones who have the capital to go out and try crazy ideas that may or may not work. We're the ones that have the resources to build automated systems that still, for a lot of people in the world, are out of reach. So we almost have a responsibility to use the resources and the privilege and the knowledge that we have to make everything better.
Have you seen any ideas or practices in the companies that you've worked with, or that the peers have worked with, peers or colleagues have worked with, that might hold some of the solutions, particularly around starting to corral this really toxic, the toxic exchanges that happen online and can be really degrading to folks? We were talking about this a little bit in the hall. Have you seen anything that's promising?
Not really. Twitter suspends reported accounts now. There's a lot of dialogues that are going on. Things are just starting to change. Twitter has a block feature. They suspend accounts. GitHub just announced a block feature as well. Blocking is kind of like the first line of defense in these kinds of situations. But a lot of it really comes down to the companies investing more in those tools and specifically creating inclusive spaces. There's a lot of work to do.
And are there strategies that we might use kind of within the sector that aren't necessarily tied to a company, but things and ways that we can think about participating in the tech sector that will become practices that would be useful here?
A lot of it is just not sitting by silently. It's, you see one person talking down to another person, or you see someone calling someone a whiner that they shouldn't be in the tech industry on Twitter. You step in and you say, hey, that's not right. Because until we start changing the people won't change. So it's a big responsibility.
All right, until we start changing the people won't change.
Somebody's got to tweet that.
That's good, yes.
So, Mai, you have amassed this really impressive track record of tech business leadership, and I'm curious about the kinds of challenges that you have encountered and overcome, what it took to overcome them and kind of forge this path. And also, you're a mom of twins, and we're curious about the experience that you see your 13-year-olds?
Yes,
your
12-year-olds.
I don't want to give them any extra year yet. I mean, they grow up fast, right? So the different experiences that your kids may be having, because one is a girl, one is a boy, as they start to kind of embrace tech. Yeah. So your career and also your kids.
Okay. I was just chatting with someone in the hallway. In 25 years in industry, I've seen so much things change and improve, but yet there's still so much more that we can do. In looking back at my career, and even not so many years ago, most of the time I'm still the only woman in a room, in a conversation. And in my career, what I've noticed when I look back at all the things I've done is I always had to work extra hard. I always had to work extra hard against my peers to learn where there's more business, about the business, and definitely more about the technology and the coding. And so one is always to prove myself, because it seems like, at the beginning too, that I noticed like every time someone asked me a question, they would go ask either my peer or my boss the identical question, as if they didn't listen. And I remember when I was younger, I used to tell my manager, I was like, he came here and asked me, and I was my answer. And he asked you the same thing. And it's exactly what I said. He's like, no, I get that. It's okay. Eventually, they'll get it that you know what you're talking about. And so I saw that a lot in my career. And so I had to work extra hard to prove myself in a sense is that I had to work to build a relationship with people. So I spent a lot of time going out, having coffees. It's just they get to know me. It's like, hey, this is my practice, the things that I can do. So then they begin to trust me more. So then when I answer the question, like, okay, yes, that's the answer. Versus they don't have to second guess me. And the other thing too is like I just learned over time too is to learn a lot more. So you know when you go into school, you learn all these computer languages. You get to the business, and your company does a bunch of other different languages. So I realized I had to learn all of those, and I had to learn extra. I look at my peers like, who else? You know, what else do they know? What else have they built? What else have they done? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Or I better start learning. So I did a lot of self-taught learning, asking a lot of questions to learn, just to be able to keep up and to prove myself. And I also took on a lot of extra projects to sharpen my skills and to demonstrate my capabilities. So they would trust me like, okay, wow, she can do that, that, and that. Okay, so then she can also do this. Because otherwise they always give me the things that I always do and not anything that's different. So it was a lot of hard work through the years.
So there's a path of personal responsibility that you are, well, you're taking responsibility for your own kind of behavior and learning and what you need to do. So you're working as much as you can to be respected and to build connections with people and to build a rapport with people. What advice do you have to folks at companies so that it doesn't always fall on the shoulders of individuals, but there's a company environment that brings out the best in its employees?
It is, and so I've actually been involved in every company I've been to, a lot of women type of group, women in tech, women technology circle, women at Microsoft, and things like that to speak on behalf of the women. And so to create programs and opportunities and to focus on women and women development. So one of the things that I've done in every company I've gone to is making sure that our interviewing process, I randomly audit and review to make sure that my team is assessing all the candidates fairly. Especially when I look at them, I was like, where are all the female resumes? And then many of them don't make it to the queue. I'm like, so I randomly pull them out to see what questions were asked to whom, what was the answer, and sometimes I circle back going, hey, this answer is good enough, isn't it? Did we create a special criteria? Like, what happened? And so I said, or I would say, hey, maybe the way you asked the question didn't understand. So sometimes I actually would give the person a second chance to say, hey, maybe we can have a second person screening, maybe because of the language barrier, whatever that it was, situation. And so I would do that. And so I would try to give that culture to make sure it's more fair. And then at the same time, too, is when the women I bring in, I also spend a lot of time development. So many of the folks in my team, the organization, my HR business partners, and even my product partners stuff, we pay attention to the women and the women developers. And so a lot of times I get them to the team and say, hey, are you comfortable? Is it okay? You seem to be the only girl, or in many meetings I would sit in the back and I would watch. I said, hey, and I would provide all the encouragement, like, hey, I really like the way you proposed that solution. I really like the way you said that. Well done. I thought that was very creative, although it wasn't accepted, but so I try to give a lot of comments and feedback so they're not so scared, not so nervous, and they know that, hey, somebody's watching and they're providing encouragement and that it's okay. So I foster that culture, and I try to expand that culture through the women tech groups.
And what are others, namely the men, learning from you in the ways that you point out bias, potential bias in application and selection and hiring processes, in the ways that you coach and mentor folks who come in and help to develop their leadership? What are other people learning from you that can be institutionalized so that, again, it's not all on your shoulders, but everybody is starting to buy in and lift up the potential talent that resides.
So a lot of these things, I have very open conversations. I run an organization that's very open and transparent. We talk about all kinds of stuff in my, I have an architecture roundtable I run. I have a manager meeting I run. I have a tech lead table that I run, and I talk about very openly about some of the people that we've hired, the things that they've done really well, things that we want to improve. And so I always make sure that it's very open and we talk about it. And I always bring out the fact that it's like, hey, is this situation, scenario, it's not the person or the result of the problem or the way we design things. It's the situation they're in, the challenges and the choice we made at what we knew at this time. So try to remove the person or the individual and more focusing on the topic. So as I do more of that, people realize, hey, let's just talk about the situation at hand, the situation, the problem, and not focus on the people, the team, the person. So I try to make a very open culture. And as I also do these random audits and stuff, I teach many of my male colleagues and the folks in my team that, hey, one is that you do have to pay attention. is it the way you ask the questions? Are you asking the same to every candidate? And then they're like, oh yeah, you're right. Every time I see a kid, it's like a third year schooling, I'm looking for an internship. These are the questions that we should ask. So then in my team too, I have questionnaires that I put out. It's like, these are all the tech type of skills we ask for third year, for master's, for PhD candidates, and then for internship type for full-time employees first year by various levels. So then it's very open in the sense that the questions become very standard and it's much more fair. And then my team gets a chance to go in there and write the questions together. So it becomes much more standard. Then I don't have to worry about that selective questions are being asked to certain individuals.
So we should expect your curriculum and book out sometime next year, then, right?
Cedric, I was just going to say that one of the things that Mai brought up that I think is so interesting that we're hearing a lot from women in the industry is this idea of having to work harder just to be taken seriously, or to have to work harder to maintain a certain level, harder than their male coworker. And it's one of the reasons, I think you all saw the chart that showed that at 10 years into a career, 41% of women drop off, only 17% of men. And people like to blame that on women having children, but women have children not just in tech, right? But in medicine and law and everywhere else. And that what really is happening here are these sort of microaggressions, or that absolutely gets to be exhausting. And you get to a point where it's just too much anymore to have to go and work that much harder. It's like dog years, right?
Well, so then I want to ask, for this audience particularly, comprised mostly of students, that they're more than likely going to run into microaggressions in the workplace, or as they're kind of getting into tech workplaces. What is to be done about that? In addition to workplaces trying to shift and change their cultures, what is the kind of personal fortitude or what are the strategies that people can use in order to deal with those microaggressions?
Well, I think to start with, it's just getting more women in the workplace. And more women in leadership. Because when you do that, it's sort of the idea of the posse, right? It's easier to keep women and people of color in a group if they feel as though they have a community and they have help. And then I think male allies is incredibly important. There are a lot of amazing men out there who don't necessarily realize what a woman's going through or what a person of color is going through. And I think that the more they become aware of all of our unconscious bias, it enables them to become allies and to be vocal. And I think when I was down at TED Women, one of the best comments I heard was, a true male ally is a man that's willing to stand up and defend women when there are no women in the room. Right on. And I love that. Yes. I think that's right.
Indeed. And I mean, in thinking about intersectionality and how gender and race and class and orientation and age and ability status are all tied together, that's a practice that can be used across kind of multiple identities, right? Being able to stand up and speak about or defend any particular group of people when they're not present is a huge kind of push or principle behind allyship. Believe deeply in that. Any other advice about kind of dealing with microaggression?
One thing that I would say is, this has worked for me. It might not work for everyone, but I grew up in New York, is to just be very forward with things. So I am a lead software engineer at my company. Most of the other people at this level are between 32 to 40. I'm 27. So I'm very much usually the youngest person in the room. This is not the first time this has happened. Thank you for Brand New Industries for letting me do this. 6 years experience in a less than 10-year-old industry. Turns out it's really great. And so it's a similar thing to being a woman and having to prove yourself. It's the proving yourself to the people who, might have actually been coding for as long as I've been alive, which I actually have interviewed people where that's been the case, which has been very strange. But then making sure that you are forward with your ideas, you're confident in your ideas, and then of course getting support from other people. My manager is a huge part of helping me fit into the team and If something happens where someone asks a question, I answer it, and then someone else repeats the answer, they point it out. They say, that's exactly what Michelle said. And that helps everyone become more aware of the fact that not everyone's being treated fairly, but also helps level that playing field.
Yes.
So it is about allies. And another thing that I would say is when you're creating these inclusivity groups, women in tech groups, professional developer networks, Capital One also has an African American network. We have all sorts of internal things. It's important to have those allies there, because if the people who are the ones who are underrepresented are the only ones making noise, nothing's going to change. We need everyone to help.
Well, I mean, that's it, and I think that's a really important point. You know, I've often said after a screening that this is not about pointing the finger at men, right? I mean, and I think that we were very careful in making the film that nobody felt objectified by it, or I think it's really important. It's about collaboration. It's about working together.
Yeah, and I always appreciate that spirit when I see it, because it doesn't make folks feel like they're standing accused.
Like the victim,
Oh, this is a learning. Robin let me tag along with her to a screening in London, and that was done by a company, and there was a guy in the audience who said, "Oh, I'd never really thought about that." And I just thought that was so charming. Any quick advice? And then we're going to get to our questions.
Yes, I was just going to say, too, is like having a mentor actually helps a lot, because when you have a really bad day, and sometimes it happens, and your ally's not there in the real situation with you, you have to be able to talk it out with somebody who understands your situation, and whoever is able to give you a lot of guidance, a lot of hope, a lot of encouragement, and just to uplift you, because a lot of times it could be very dejecting. You know, you go home, you get really depressed, you're really sad, and you're always like, oh my God, what do I do, what do I do? And a lot of times it's not you. And so it's helped to be able to talk to somebody else. So having those mentors, having those people to talk to you, who can then shed a certain light on you, and just to keep your hope and your spirits up, and to focus on your long-term goals. You're here to do this, and it's not about this one situation, and it's okay. So it happened. And so, but you're going there, and keep on going.
Yes. Amen. I used to think of have a mentor was a combination of kind of a parent and a boss, which I mean didn't appeal to me at all. I'm a Leo, so that didn't appeal. But they're very necessary kind of parts of a support system in the workplace, outside of the workplace, and just personally. And it's not about being bossed, but about being supported. So we have a question. Yes, please.
Hi there. First of all, thank you so much for all of you who sponsored this and put it together, and for the students, and especially the gentlemen as well who are here and listening. I wonder if it's okay to do like a 30% advice and 70% question. The question is about whether any of you have seen or heard of providing childcare for free in your companies. And I tell you why. You might probably have heard of this Swedish government policy. I don't know if you know the study where the government instituted free childcare mandatorily for all employers. And they were trying to increase their GDP by bringing women back into the workforce. And it turned out so well that it not only did women come back to the workforce, and therefore a lot more value creation happened, a lot more families had double income, and therefore they could have a much better life or lifestyle. But actually the number of children the average number of children, I think, went from 1.8 to 2.3, and so they solved their shrinking nationality problem. So it was a very successful thing, and I've brought it up. I finished Harvard, and I was a software engineer for 8 years, and I've brought this up several times, and it really is not really happening until a woman becomes a CEO. We saw that at eBay, and then suddenly, boom, it happens. And the men benefit tremendously. So what I wanted to say, perhaps to the young audience, is by giving, how do I say this? By giving some kind of systematic or institutionalized support, especially I think for childcare, actually it's not only the women who benefit, But imagine when you get to the age where you would like to become a father to your children more closely, how wonderful it would be to have high quality childcare right there. And you could walk over to a building or the end of the corridor and have your children. And I wanted to have that discussion, even though the audience might be a little young, but I think they can see that in 10 years' time, that will be quite important for
No,
everybody.
I think your point is very well taken, and Scandinavia is very far advanced in this way, certainly compared to the United States. Tech is young, right? It's about 50 years old. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Mark Zuckerberg just had a child, I think is a really positive thing. I think things will change, because I think the problem is that, which is exactly what we're talking about, it's very hard to focus on anything outside of your own little world and your own box, which is why we need diversity in the workplace and everywhere else. And so the fact that suddenly Mark Zuckerberg is a parent, I think he suddenly understands why somebody would need flex hours or childcare, or maybe even in 2 years he'll understand why somebody wants to cut out at 4 o'clock and go to a ballet recital. So it's, this is how things develop and change, but it's a really good observation and an example of why it's important to have, why ageism is a problem in tech, but why we need to have diversity of age and of socioeconomic backgrounds and people of color and gender.
Yeah, because I think that's the only way to get the diversity of thinking, creativity, and solving problems. I think it's like until you get, folks like, having the situation of being a parent, and I'm working full time, and I have to be an executive, and then there's childcare, I gotta go home. These problems won't be solved, and we won't get that investment.
Yeah. So I have a very similar anecdote. So my mom worked at a company in the early 90s called CMP that had that. So from the preschool age, so about 2 or 3, up until I think maybe 4th, 5th grade, summers were always spent at the free childcare, and then preschool was entirely there at the company. My mom was a single mother, so it was amazing because we'd be able to get up in the morning. She'd take me with her to work. Most of my memories are actually driving through the parking garage. I don't know why. She had a convertible. It was really cool.
But it's also a cultural issue, right?
Yeah.
We have a stigma in the United States that it is not okay to be the dad that stays home with the kids. It's changing a little bit, but there's judgment. There's judgment that women place on women that don't work, and women that don't work place judgment, when they're full-time taking care of the kids, they judge women that do work. So it's really hard to be in that situation, and I think then when you're the stay-at-home dad, there's a huge stigma against that as well. So Scandinavia doesn't they've blown through that barrier.
I also I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Sam.
I also wonder about how we value certain benefits. There's the provision at some of the larger companies of food, of dry cleaning services, of et cetera, and I think, well, why would you have dry cleaning and laundry on site but not childcare, which arguably more people are affected by, and it can be a more pressing issue. I mean, having dirty clothes that can get kind of raw and pressing, but...
But the average age in Silicon Valley where you've got the dry cleaning coming is 23,
Right.
24.
It's young.
They need it yet, exactly.
That's right. Did we have another question? We have 2 mics. Come on up to the mic.
Hello, yeah. So first off, I noticed that you had Sarah Allen on the show from Railsbridge, which is pretty cool. I actually TA and teach over there.
Oh, great.
For some of those
Good
workshops.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, I actually met her once. She's pretty awesome.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if you covered this in the first half of the movie, but I wondered if you had any more resources available for people that want to go one step further after they watch the movie. I know that you had a link there, but I was wondering if that contains workshops that are more friendly to women, boot camps and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started a website called shescoding.org. It's a little bit more gender specific than we intended, but it's impossible to find original URLs these days. It's shescoding.org, and it lists every viable coding organization or group that's teaching coding, whether you want to send your kid to boot camp or send your kid to summer camp, or whether you want to go to boot camp, or whether you want to learn online, or so they're all up there. So have a look. And if you know of any that aren't up there and you want them up, then let us know and we'll put it up there. But I think that's it. And then often when I'm asked, okay, well, what's the next step? What do we do? And I love that question is asked more often by men than it is by women. I usually, and I don't mean this to be glib at all, but I usually have 3 answers. One is hire women. 2, promote women, and 3, pay women equally. And I think that's a start. But as a man, be an ally. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Actually, if no one else has a question, I'll ask another one. So I saw also with Etsy's platform that they had some success. So like, what are some other like main thing that's like you've seen work really well in the industry? Also, I was in class from 4 to 5, so I'm not sure if you covered that in the first hour. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, well, no, not necessarily. Pretty much all the what you can do came at the very last, so you made that part of the film. I think that it's really hard to convince 5 guys that have either just dropped out of Stanford or made it through or whatever, that are starting this brilliant idea for a new, the new Snapchat, how important it is to bring diversity on then. And when you've got your face down and you're scrambling for those VC funds and everything, it's really hard to think about bringing on a woman, bringing on a person of color, bringing on socioeconomic diversity. And yet that is when it's most important. Because if you can bring it on then, you can bring more people in, right? And diversity begets diversity. And it's, as did Nate say it in this version of the film, I think that one of the co-founders of Airbnb says the hardest thing he did was bringing on that first woman. Because he knew he had to bring in a woman that could handle the environment, that would stick, and that would help him bring in more women. So I think that the companies that have been successful and that have an easier time really think about diversity from the moment that they're starting up the company. And that's not really easy to do, nor is it easy to convince them of the necessity of it and the benefits of it. And this is when I really like to cite this, the female factor, which says that this was a study that was done, published in the Harvard Business Review of 2011. And fascinating to me, it says that regardless of the individual IQs of a group of men on a team, you add one woman to that team, and the collective IQ rises. And the more women you add, the higher the IQ. So this is not about all women on a team, right? Because that's not the best either. But if you add a woman to a team, you've got higher IQ. A lot of that is because women have a different EQ, right? We have more, you've always heard women are more intuitive. That emotional intelligence offers a lot. Women are more careful about risk. So they add a whole different perspective. So there are most people look up from their iPhones when I talk about this, because there are financial reasons, to add a woman to your team. You're gonna have higher ROI.
Yes. Better problem solving.
I do have, in addition to Etsy, Square does a very similar thing with their coding camp, which focuses on bringing in basically university graduates, boot camp graduates. It's like a 3-month program, very similar to Etsy's. Facebook recently launched a return to the workforce. So if you're a stay-at-home mom that stayed home with the kids, whatever you want to return to the workforce, returnship, that's the word. They're, I think, one of the first companies to do that. So there are other initiatives starting. Most of them are focusing on more junior developers, unfortunately, because as we've heard and as we've seen, you need those senior women, and you need those senior people of color, and you need senior people of all shapes and sizes in order to keep all of that fantastic diverse talent. So we're seeing a lot of movement at the very bottom of the pyramid. But honestly, I haven't really seen any company doing things at the top.
Ma, anything to share as we close?
Yeah, in my experience too, is when the group just is a lot more enriched when there's diversity. I always try to look at my team and I try to bench strength everybody, not just tech talent, but personalities and diversity. Because I always think that collectively, I've noticed that we have coded better, the quality of our products is a bit better, people just enjoy it more. So I always look at my team, it's like, oh my God, we have too much of this type. The next people we interview or we hire, we're gonna have to slot them looking like this, or or that type of skill or the personality. So we try to bench strength that team, and I noticed that in companies I've gone to where I've been fortunate enough to build my organization, it has worked out really well. It has worked out really well. So that's what I always would be encouraging anybody who's, when you rise up in your career, you get a chance to build your own organization and hire. This is your chance to make that difference. This is your chance to voice what it should be, what this collective group can do, what you can do. So Definitely, yeah.
Well,
Makes a big
from
difference.
your ears to their careers. So.
One more question up here.
One more, very quick.
I think because we've been talking a lot about what happens in industry and kind of after we graduate and like start working in the field, but something I noticed a lot, especially like with like here at school, is that I think there needs to be a change in approach in how CS is taught, because I know a lot of people are they're very deterred by the fact that, oh, I have to be good at math to like be able to do computer science, or like a lot of classes are taught in a very, very analytical, like dry way, and they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that, or this isn't very interesting to me. And I was wondering kind of what you thought about that, and how, if you ever thought about like, oh, this is a way that CS could be taught better. Like, I know there was that app for children, but there hasn't been a bridge between the abstract funness that is required for young children, and then like between that and like the really intense math stuff that happens in industry, like kind of that range that needs to happen. So
Does anybody in here have Dan Garcia as a teacher? Has anyone taken his CS classes? Yeah, so you know he's pretty impressive, right? So Dan decided that what we have here is a stereotype issue, right? Because this horrible stereotype that you have to be drinking Red Bull and eating stale pizza in the basement till 3 a.m., right, if you want to be a coder. And that's why a lot of women don't want to get in it. They think that doesn't sound so exciting. So Dan Garcia actually changed CS10, I believe it was, to the joy and beauty of computing. And not only did he change the name, because that seems a little too shallow why a woman would just sign up for it more then, but he changed the curriculum and made sure that he introduced informatics and all sorts of different aspects to coding in the first few weeks, so that it wasn't like this quantitative hazing class. It was more about, and I think that for a while CS was like that. It was like, okay, third level, let's weed them out. Let's get it. And that's what happened to my daughter, which is, she was like, okay, Mom, this is so not for me. But her cousins and a couple of her best friends are in the room. So, but I think what's interesting is that when you can approach it, and that's the same thing that Maria Clave was saying, make the first intro classes not scary. Show them all the if you showed like what Danielle Feinberg is doing at Pixar, and that there's strings of code at the base of that, I think people are going to think, wow, that is so cool. That's not sitting in the basement. That is something that's really creative and problem solving and interesting. And so I agree with you.
No, I was just only add is like, I totally understand what you're talking about, because we didn't get a chance about, but like with my twin kids, they took their first programming class last summer, and so I noticed that they learned very differently. Mm-hmm. And so I was discussing this at one of these tech roundtable with other peers at work, and I said, what my experience I've seen is my daughter's very social and interactive. She likes to code interactively. And versus my son puts her hands along, and they approached the exact problem solving I noticed that the teacher gave, and the results were very different. And so one of the things I talked to with my colleagues at work is like, okay, so the next sets of women we bring in, if I notice they're shy and stuff, I'm going to do immediately pair programming is how I'm going to onboard the women. And so I realized it's like they like social interaction, because sometimes it's scary, it's a new environment. I don't know what all the stuff that goes on internally, oh my God, there's all these guys and stuff. And so I realized that when I set them up to do pair programming, or I also set them with mentors. So even if they're male, I set them with an immediate mentor. So you suddenly have a buddy you can interact with anytime you want. And it just makes the onboarding so much easier and boosts up the confidence skills. Mm-hmm. So what I noticed out of my daughter last summer in the way they both were approaching programming and studying, I said, oh, well, that's interesting. Yes, and so in teaching, I realized it has to be different. So I've changed the way I approach to onboarding women engineers.
Well, and also this is now part of a national conversation. President Obama in his State of the Union address alluded to needing to expand computer science education access for everyone, and at the end of January, beginning of February, announced this Computer Science for All initiative, where they're starting to look at how to make this sector more inclusive, how to make computer science education more appealing to a broader cross-section of students, talent, people who reside in our communities who aren't always tapped for it, who have the talent and the smarts for it, but who aren't always encouraged to stay in the pursuit of the studies because of the culture that surrounds it. And you saw the Chief Tech Officer, Megan Smith, in the film, and she's a big proponent of this. She probably put this in the president's ear, a big proponent of let's look at and start to shift the way computer science education is laid out in the United States so we can get to a broader cross-section of folks. So great question.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
to incorporate it into all different, cross-curriculum. So it's
Right.
not about you have to take a CS class,
CS only.
but, as first, second, third graders, by the time you're dissecting frogs, you can write a string of code to visualize a data set on how many of them had tumors or whatever, right? I mean, right? So you can do that. It needs to be brought into all the classrooms.
Well, please join me in thanking the panelists, Robin, Michelle, and I.
I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Kapor Center. I just encourage you to please go online and look at all the wonderful things that are happening there. I feel incredibly fortunate that, Cedric, you were moderating today, and I do want you to know that this is the first time we've had a Southerner on the stage.
Fantastic.
So thank you all very much. And there is food, thanks to the Innovator, Berkeley Innovator outside. So please feel free to grab that. I know you all will be around, but I'm worried that you're going to be pinned on the stage. So if you start to go outside, maybe students can talk to you outside if you want to eat something.
Terrific.
Thank you.